All right, we are on to Sutra 22 of the 22nd. Let's just get right into it. Those who employ the will likewise differ, for its use may be intense, moderate, or gentle. In respect to the attainment of true spiritual consciousness, there is yet another way. So these sutras are it's a teaching. So we're far enough in at this point now where we can, really start to pick up on this, and this is, it's showing us, it's teaching us. Not necessarily that each of these are separate. It's all going to turn out to synthesize. Right? So it would be wise here to make clear the two ways whereby men reach the goal: knowledge of the spiritual life and emancipation. There is the way of yoga as outlined by Patanjali, whereby through the use of the will, discrimination between the self and the not self is achieved and pure spirit is arrived at. This is the way for the fifth or Aryan race, for those whose function is to develop the fifth principle or mind and thus become true sons of mind. It is their part to become the five-pointed star, the star of the perfected man in all his glory. Through following this way, the five planes of human and superhuman evolution are dominated, and Atma, or the will of God, the Father aspect, stand revealed through the medium of Buddhi, or the Christ consciousness, having for its vehicle Manas, or higher mind. And Atma being the plane higher than Buddhi. So let's go. Then the other way is the way of pure devotion through intense adoration and entire consecration. The aspirant arrives at a knowledge of the reality of spirit. Okay, this was the older way. This is the way of least resistance for many. It was the method of attainment for the race preceding the Aryan. Now, this is the way of, we've talked about this in the previous sutras. This is bhakti yoga. And, this is really what, many really devout Christians would be considered to be practicing bhakti yoga because of their devotion to, I want to say Christ, but maybe they're devoted to what they perceive as Jesus. I don't know. Depends. It was the method of attainment for the race pursuing the Aryan. It largely ignores the fifth principle and is the sublimation of sensuous perception being the way of intense feeling. Now that the fifth principle being mind, right? Through following this method, the four planes are dominated and Buddhi, or the Christ, stands revealed. The fourth plane being the Buddhic plane. Students should differentiate clearly between these two ways, remembering that the white occultist blends the two, and if in this life he follows the way of Raja Yoga with fervor and love, it will be because in other lives he set his foot upon the way of devotion and found the Christ, the Buddhi within. In this life, he will recapitulate his experience, plus the intense exercise of the will and control of the mind, which will eventually reveal to him his Father in heaven, the point of pure spirit. Now that is likely, one of the most profound things that, you're going to find essentially in these books for an aspirant, I want to say. This is something when you set foot on the path, essentially you are, wanting to understand what's going on, and you're wanting to understand your place on the ladder and know where we are in this whole process. And this statement right here is something that contains much room for contemplation, much to be, pondered on. Really some deep stuff. I'm going to have to take note of that. But we'll see here. I think we should read it one more time. And students should differentiate clearly between these two ways, remembering that the white occultist blends the two. And if in this life he follows the way of Raja Yoga with fervor and love, it will be because in other lives he set his foot upon the way of devotion and found the Christ, the Buddhi within. In this life he will recapitulate his experience, plus the intense exercise of the will and control of the mind, which will eventually reveal to him his Father in heaven, the point of pure spirit. Commentators upon this sutra point out that those who follow the method of Raja Yoga and use the will are divided into three main groups. These can correspondingly be divided into 9. There are those who use the will with such intensity that exceedingly rapid results are achieved, attended, however, with certain dangers and risks. There is the risk of uneven development, of negation of the heart side of nature, and of certain destructions which will later have to be remedied. Then there are those aspirants whose progress is less rapid and who are exponents of the middle path. They proceed steadily and moderately and are called the discriminative adepts, as they permit no excesses of any kind. Their method is to be recommended to men in this particular cycle. Again, there are those gentle souls who may be regarded as characterized by an imperturbable pertinacity. I'm going to have to look that word up. And who go steadily, undeviatingly forward, eventually arriving at their goal. All right, we're going to have to look that up one second. Okay, well, it means what we all thought. If you didn't know, it just means holding strongly to an opinion or a purpose or course of action. So there we go. I just want to make that word ours as we go forward. There's a lot of advanced vocabulary, and it's good to include that in ours and make it our own. That way when we see it again, we know. So that's just helped me along the way. So again, there are those gentle souls who may be regarded as characterized by holding strong to this purpose and who go steadily, undeviatingly forward, eventually arriving at their goal. They are distinguished by an intense tenacity. Their progress is slow. They are tortoises of the path, just as the first group are the hares. In some of the old books, there are detailed accounts of these three groups of aspirants, and they are portrayed under three symbols. The intense group are depicted as goats, and aspirants of this type are frequently found in incarnation under the sign Capricorn. The moderate group are depicted by a fish, and many born under the sign of Pisces are found in this category. And the gentle or slow group are pictured as crabs and often come into incarnation under the sign of Cancer. In these three groups are to be found various subdivisions, and it is interesting to note that in the archives of the Lords of Karma, the majority of these three groups pass into the sign of Libra, or the balances towards the close of their endeavor. When in incarnation under this sign, they balance the pairs of opposites with care, they equalize their one-sided development, modifying the unevenness of their efforts hitherto, and begin to set an even pace. They frequently enter the sign of Aquarius and become bearers of water, having to carry on their heads the bowl of living water. Thus, the rapidity of their climb up the mount of initiation has to be modified, or the water will be split and the bowl be shattered. Spilt. The water will be spilt and the bowl will be shattered. Because the water is intended to slake the thirst of the masses, they must hasten their progress, for the need is great. Thus the first shall be the last, and the last shall be first. And the hare and the tortoise meet at the goal. These things are interesting. As we follow astrology, I follow astrology, and Kara, our mentor, is an astrologer. And she's a Libra. I'm also a Libra. So that's this is something new. I don't remember. I've never seen this before that I can recall. So that's interesting. To try just to even consider these things, and where we might, who are you in this? Who are we? We figure, we learn to try to figure these, work to figure these things out, and then at some point we let it, honestly, we let it go, and it doesn't become as important because it's just something that's happening, I suppose. It's just there. We're not focused on that part any longer. We're focused on our work and beingness, and our consciousness. It's it's moved outside of that kind of personal care for ourselves for the most part. And that's the goal. So by intense devotion to Ishvara, knowledge of Ishvara is gained in the 23rd Sutra. Ishvara is the sun in manifestation through the sun. The sun in manifestation through the sun. This is the macrocosmic aspect. Ishvara is the Son of God, the cosmic Christ, resplendent in the heart of each of us. The word heart is here used in its occult connotation. The following correspondences may be found illuminating and should be studied with care. And we have Spirit, Father, our Father in heaven, monad, the will, the head, and represented by the central spiritual sun. And then we have the soul, sun, ego, love, heart, heart of the sun. Then we have body, or the Holy Spirit, personality, active intelligence, throat, and physical sun. And in this, you have the triplicity, you have the triangle, we have the top of the second plane in the system, where we find the monad. Just 1 second, I'm going to try something. Right back. All right, well, I wasn't able to do what I was trying to do there. But again, the Constitution of Man chart comes up, and this is something that we should be correlating to the chart, or I would recommend it just to build it in. This is the triangle on the top of the chart. It's great. All these things here really help to bring together, what the synthesis of all of it, of everything we've heard. So as far as the second aspect, and therefore, the real meaning of this sutra is that through intense devotion to and love of Ishvara, the Christ in manifestation, that Christ or soul may be contacted or known. Ishvara is God in the heart of every child of God. He is to be found in the cave of the heart. He is to be reached through pure love and devoted service. And when reached, he will be seen seated upon the 12-petaled lotus in the heart, holding in his hands the jewel in the lotus. Thus the devotee finds Ishvara, and when the devotee becomes the Raja Yogin, then Ishvara will reveal to him the secret of the jewel. When Christ is known as king upon the throne of the heart, then he will reveal the Father to his devotee. But the devotee has to tread the path of Raja Yoga and combine intellectual knowledge, mental control, and discipline before the revelation can be truly made. The mystic must eventually become the occultist. The head qualities and the heart qualities must be equally developed, for both are equally divine. And, this is really the path as laid out by, Alice Bailey and DK in the 24 books, in the 24 esoteric books. In order to pass, and it's the path of initiation that's being discussed here, I want to say. And in order to get, to that point, the physical, astral, and mental nature must all be controlled and aligned. And then these things can take place, just as, in the, we learn to control the physical plane, then we learn to control the emotional desire nature. And then in order to get to the mental permanent atom, where we need to control all three of the lower three worlds, So this is all coming together. And 24, this Ishvara is the soul untouched by limitation, free from karma and desire. I just wanted to see what the internet says here about it real quickly, just to get more, a bit more perspective. But in Sanskrit, it means Lord. In Hinduism, God understood as a person in contrast to the impersonal transcendent Brahman. Typically, particularly favored by devotees of the god Shiva. The comparable term Bhagavan, also meaning Lord, is also used by those followers of Vishnu. So, has a wide range of meanings, but I would say for us, personally, it's the soul. So we stick to that. And that's what makes it that's what simplifies the whole thing for us. This as far as the soul, untouched by limitation, free from karma and desire. Here we have the picture of the spiritual man as he is in reality. His relation to the three worlds is shown. This is the state of the master or the adept, the soul who has come into its birthright and is no longer under control of the forces and energies of the lower nature. There is given in this and the following three sutras a picture of the liberated man who has passed through the cycle of incarnation and through struggle and experience has found the true self. Here is depicted the nature of the soul or angel, the Son of God, the ego, or the higher self. He is stated to be untouched by limitation. One, untouched by limitations. He is no longer cribbed, cabined, and confined by the lower quaternary, the lower four centers, chakras, the more dense. He is no longer crucified upon the cross of matter. The four lower sheets, dense, etheric, emotional, and mental, are no longer his prison. They are but instruments which he can use or vacate at will. His will functions freely, and if he stays within the realm of the three worlds, it is of his own choice, and his self-imposed limitation can be terminated at will. He is master in the three worlds, a son of God, dominating and controlling the lower creations. Two, he's free from karma. Through knowledge of the law, he has adjusted all his karma, paid all his debts, canceled all his obligations, settled all claims against him, and through his subjective realization, has entered consciously into the world of causes. The world of effects is left behind insofar as the three worlds are concerned. Thus, he no longer sets in motion conditions which must produce evil effects. He works ever with the law, and every demonstration of energy, the spoken word, and the initiated action is undertaken with a full knowledge of the result to be attained. Thus, nothing he does produces evil results, and no karma is thereby entailed. Average men deal with effects and blindly work their way through them. The master deals with causes and effects he produces through the wielding of the law. Do not limit or hold him. He's free from desire. He no longer does the things of sensuous perception on any of the three planes. I'm sorry. It's interesting to read, this, the master sometimes, and Alice Bailey, and this writing style, sometimes it's seen right away, and sometimes it takes a second to pick it back up. So no longer do the thing. So I was thinking here, no longer do in the opposite way, in the other way. No longer does, no longer do, like I'm going to do something. But here it is, no longer do the things of sensuous perception on any of the three planes attract or adore him. So sometimes it takes a second to catch back up to the thought. His consciousness is inward and upward. It is no longer downward and outgoing. He is at the center, and the periphery no longer attracts him. The longing for experience, the craving for physical plane existence, and the desire for the form aspect and its many variations has for him no appeal. He has experienced, he knows, he has suffered, and he has been forced into incarnation through his longing for the not self. Now all that is ended, and he is the freed soul. I have this feeling of, just from my own perspective, and I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but I'm going to say it anyway. I want to say I remember this will to live in those three worlds, pushing me along, pushing this along, where longed to be in this world. I want to say, and hopefully we're getting to the point where that's not the case anymore. We'll see, but whatever. We're just doing we're doing what we're doing here. We're learning and growing. But it's interesting because I very much remember that will to live and be longing for the not self. So the 25th Sutra, in Ishvara, the Guru Deva, the germ of all knowledge expands into infinity. So in the soul, the germ of all knowledge expands into infinity. Or in Christ consciousness, the germ of all knowledge expands into infinity. Or we could say, in love, in the heart, in the soul, and the sun, and the ego, expands into infinity. In the macrocosmic sense, God is the master of all, and he is the sum total of omniscience, being, as is easily seen, the sum total of all states of consciousness. Sure, that is easily seen. This omniscience, if we don't know, meaning all-knowing, that's something that I had to look up early on in my studies, or earlier on. I don't say early, but it's not a word that came around for quite a while. It's not something that needed to be understood for a while. And then pretty much all-knowing, and then omnipotent being, pretty much all-powerful. He is the soul of all things, and the soul of the atom of matter, as well as the souls of men, are a part of his infinite realization. The soul of the human being is potentially the same, and as soon as the consciousness ceases to identify itself with the vehicles or organs, the germ of all knowledge begins to expand. In the disciple, the adept, master, or Mahatma, in the Christ, the Buddha, and in the Lord of the world, who is mentioned in the Bible as the Ancient of Days, this germ of all knowledge can be seen as differing stages of unfoldment. God consciousness is theirs, and they pass from one initiation to another. I guess we could say this is this higher, the path of higher initiation. This is higher initiations. At each stage, a man is a master, but ever beyond the point attained, another possible expansion becomes apparent, and ever the process is the same. This process may be summed up in the following statements. An urge or determination to achieve the new knowledge. 2, the holding of the consciousness already unfolded and its utilization, and from the point achieved, working forward towards further realization. 3, the overcoming of the difficulties incident to the limitations of the vehicles of consciousness and to karma. And 4, the occult tests which are imposed upon the pupil when he shows ability. 5, the triumph of the pupil. Sorry, I'm getting text messages. It is the middle of the week. I have work, but don't get me wrong. I often contemplate the fact that I need to maybe need to stop doing some of that stuff too. Then we have the occult tests when he shows ability, the triumph, the recognition of his triumph and attainment by the guides of the race, the planetary hierarchy, the recognition of his triumph and attainment of his, see, this is interesting. The recognition of his triumph and attainment by the guides of the race, the planetary hierarchy, and then the vision of what lies ahead. Thus does the unfoldment proceed in each cycle of endeavor. And in each cycle of endeavor, the evolving Son of God comes into his birthright and takes the position of a knower, one who has heard the tradition, experienced the dissolution of that hitherto held, seen that which is hidden from those who abide by the tradition, substituted that which is newly seen, donated the acquired possession to those who hold out empty hands, and passed on to inner halls of learning. Students would do well in studying these few sutras related to Ishvara to bear in mind that they have reference to the Son of God, the second person of the Trinity, and he manifests through the medium of the solar system to the macrocosmic soul. Secondary meaning has reference also to the divine Son of God, the second aspect, monadic, as he manifests through the medium of a human being. This is the microcosmic soul. The following synonyms of the Ishvara aspect may be found of value. All right, I'm going to read this again. The secondary meaning has reference also to the divine Son of God. Oh, okay, the second aspect, I'm assuming that's the second plane, the monadic plane, and he manifests through the medium of a human being. Okay, so let's go through these. Ishvara, let's see if I can get that all on the screen at one time here. Ishvara, the second aspect, whose nature is love, the Son of God, the revealer of the Father, the cosmic Christ, God in incarnation, Vishnu, second person in the Hindu Trimurti, the soul of all things. Atoms and souls are synonymous terms. The all self, the sum total of all selves. I am that, that's group consciousness. The Om is the word of revelation, the word, God in the flesh, the Guru Deva, master of all, and the light of the world, shining in darkness. That's the macrocosm. The microcosm, the second aspect is love, wisdom, the Son of the Father, the revealer of the monad, the Christ in you, the hope of glory, the soul, and consciousness, the higher self, the Lord of the bodies, the ego, the self-realizing identity, the word, God in incarnation, Om, the word of revelation, the master, the self on the throne, the radiant, I don't know how to say that, Ugodies. Stand by. Let's see, 1 second. All right, so I'm going to say we're going to go with Ogoides, or Ogoides, like August. And I found it means essentially the radiant Ogoides essentially means the correlation is the light body or the light within or the luminous body. And then we have the spiritual man utilizing the lower man. So very interesting stuff here. All right, we're on to number 26, the 26th sutra, or Sutra 26. I don't know how exactly the proper way to say that, but I think it's, I like all the ways except to say we're on to number 26. That doesn't sound good when we're reading this. Ishvara, or the Guru Deva, being unlimited by time condition, is the teacher of the primeval lords. Since the conditions of time and space existed, there have been those who have achieved omniscience, those whose germ of knowledge has been subjected to proper culture and thus developed until it flowered forth into the full glory of the liberated soul. This condition became possible through certain factors. One, the identity of each individual soul with the oversoul. To the attractive force of that oversoul as it drew the separated soul of all things gradually back into itself. This is the force of evolution itself, the great attractive agent which recalls the outgoing points of divine life, the units of consciousness, back to their source. It involves the response of the individual soul to the cosmic soul force. It's the force of evolution itself, the great attractive agent, which recalls the outgoing points of divine life, the units of consciousness back to their source. Okay. 3, the intensive training given towards the climax by the occult hierarchy, whereby souls receive a stimulation and vitalization, which enables them to make more rapid progress. The occult student must remember that this process has gone on in the wheels and cycles preceding our planet Earth. The primeval lords or sages are those great adepts who, having tasted experience under the law of rebirth, were initiated into the mysteries by the one initiator the representative in our planet of the oversoul, they in their turn became teachers and initiators into the mysteries. The one master is found within. It is the soul, the inner ruler, the thinker on his own plane. This one master is a corporate part of the whole, of the all soul. Each expansion of consciousness which a man undergoes fits him to be a master to those who have not taken a similar expansion. Therefore, mastery being achieved, there is nothing, speaking in terms of the human kingdom, to be found except masters who are likewise disciples. All are learners and all are teachers, differing only in degree of realization. For instance, we've got aspirants to the path or disciples of lesser disciples. Probationers on the path are disciples of higher ones. Accepted disciples are disciples of an adept and of a master. An adept is the disciple of a master. A master is the disciple of a Mahatma. The Mahatmas are the disciples of still higher initiates. These in turn are the disciples of the Christ or of that official who is at the head of the teaching department. The head of the teaching department is the disciple of the Lord of the world. And the Lord of the world is the disciple of one of the three planetary spirits who represent the three major aspects. These are again disciples of the solar logos. You know, this should put things in perspective for us down here. I mean, ultimately, right? Okay, well, this is the video that I've had the most pauses so far out of 140 videos, I want to say. But it will, I'm sorry again, it will be apparent, therefore, to the careful student how interdependent all are and how the achievement of one will profoundly affect the entire body. Discipleship can be regarded as a generic term covering all those states or conditions of being in the fourth and fifth kingdoms, human and spiritual, wherein certain expanses of consciousness are brought about through specific training. Boy, is that, you know, this is very profound, you know, you know, we kind of, it's profound for it to be in front of our eyeballs, right? To see this is how this goes, right? This is something that, you know, you really want to contemplate and consider and it's really intense. Moving on to the 27th Sutra. The word Ishvara is Om. This is the Pranava. Students would remember that there are three basic words or sounds in manifestation. This is the case as far as the human kingdom is concerned. They are the word or note of nature. This is the word or the sound of all forms existing in physical plane substance, and is usually known, and as is usually known, it is sounded on the fundamental note fa. And that, I mean, you can see where that goes. I want to say, right, you know, that be fa sol la ti do, fa sol la ti da, fa sol la. It is a note with which the white occultist has nothing to do, for his work is concerned not with the increase of tangibility, but with the demonstration of the subjective or the intangible. This is the word of the third aspect, the Brahma or Holy Ghost aspect. Okay, so that's makes that clear. I had to look this up, this fa here, and then, you know, the do re mi fa sol la ti do, or yeah, do re mi fa sol la ti. It's interesting stuff here. So the sacred, and then the second is the sacred word. This is the word of glory, the Om. This is the Pranava, the sound of conscious life itself as it is breathed forth into all forms. It is the word of the second aspect, and just as the word of nature, when rightly emanated, provides the forms which are intended to reveal the soul or second aspect, so the Pranava, when rightly expressed, demonstrates the Father or Spirit through the medium of the soul. It is the word of the incarnated sons of God. Right, it's right, the word made flesh. In such a short commentary as this, it is not possible to write a treatise on the secret of secrets and this great mystery of the ages. All that can be done is to collate certain facts about the Om and leave the student to extend the concept and grasp the significance of the brief statements made according to the state of his intuition. And then we have the lost word. The idea of this lost word has been preserved for us in Masonry. It is the word of the first aspect, the spirit aspect, and only the initiate of the third degree can truly begin to search for this word, for only the freed soul can find it. This word concerns the highest initiations, and it is profitless for us further to consider it. The following statements about the sacred word can therefore be made and should be studied with care. The Om is the word of glory, and is the Christ in us, the hope of glory. 2, the word, when rightly apprehended, causes the second aspect, or Christ aspect of divinity, to shine forth resplendently. It is the sound which brings into manifestation the incarnated soul, macrocosmic or microcosmic, the ego, the Christ, the causes the radiant egoities to be seen on earth. It is the word which is the releaser of consciousness, and when correctly understood and used, releases the soul from the limitations of form in the three worlds. The Om is the synthesizer of the three aspects, and therefore is primarily the word of the human kingdom, in which the three lines or divine life meet: spirit, soul, and body. It is also the word of the fifth, the Aryan race, in a special sense. The word of that race is to reveal, the work of that race is to reveal in a newer and fuller way the nature of the inner identity of the soul within the form, the son of mind, the solar angel, the fifth principle. 7, the significance of the word only becomes apparent after the light within is realized. By its use, the spark becomes a radiant light, the light becomes a flame, and the flame eventually becomes a sun. By its use, the sun of righteousness arises in the life of every man. Each of the 3 letters has relation to the 3 aspects, and each can be applied to any of the known triplicities. The master, the God within, is indeed the word, the Om, and of this master, found at the heart of all beings, it is true that in the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, thus duality, and the word was God. Through its use, man arrives at a realization of his own essential divinity, the purpose of the form-taking process, the constitution and nature of those forms, the reality of consciousness, or the relation of the divine self or spirit to the form, its polar opposite. And this relation and its evolutionary working out we call consciousness, and the essential characteristic of this consciousness is love. The guru or master who leads a pupil up to the door of initiation, who watches over him in all the initial and subsequent tests and processes, likewise represents the word. And through the scientific use of this great sound, he produces a certain stimulation and vitalization in the centers of the disciple, thus rendering certain developments possible. More about the sacred word is not advisable to add here. So we're going to, we'll let this, our intuition guide us here, right? And what all we've read before, we've read it, allow it to synthesize, assimilate, and hopefully evoke the response and understanding. And the knowing. Enough has been given to indicate the aspirant, its purpose and potency. There will have to be communicated in other ways, and at other times, further information as the student, through study and self-initiated effort, arrives at just conclusions. It might be added that this great word, when meditated upon, gives the clue to the true esoteric meaning of the words in The Secret Doctrine by H.P. Blavatsky. Life we look upon as the one form of existence manifesting in what we call matter, or what incorrectly separating them we name spirit, soul, and matter in man. Matter is the vehicle for the manifestation of the soul on this plane of existence, and soul is the vehicle on a higher plane for the manifestation of spirit, and these 3 are a trinity synthesized by life, which pervades them all. Great seed for meditation, contemplation here. And the thing is we see these things many times. We begin to know them, and then we begin to recognize them, and we make it our own, and we can see the broader meanings in all of these things at some point. And then it continues. This is it's a process. All right, now we're on to Sutra 28. 28th Sutra. Through the sounding of the word and through reflection upon its meaning, the way is found. And we just kind of said that, right? This is a great step to contemplate, and we know this. This is not so much so new for us. This is a general paraphrase, but conveys nevertheless the correct significance of the terms used in Sanskrit. Only Vivekananda, among the many translators, gives this interpretation, putting it as follows: the repetition of the Om and meditating upon its meaning is the way. The other translators omit the final three words, though the inference is clear. The expression, the sounding of the word, must not be too literally interpreted. The esoteric sounding forth is based upon a study of the law of vibration and the gradual turning of the lower vibration of the sheaths or vestures of consciousness so that they synchronize with the note or sound of the conscious indweller. Speaking correctly, the word is to be sounded by the soul or the ego on its own plane, and the vibration will subsequently affect the various bodies or vehicles which house that soul. The process is therefore a mental one and can only really be done by those who, through meditation and discipline, coupled with service, have made a conscious at-one-ment with the soul. Aspirants to this condition have to utilize the potent factors of the imagination, visualization, and perseverance in meditation to reach this initial stage. It should be noted that this stage has to be reached, even if only in a relatively small degree, before the aspirant can become an accepted disciple. The process of sounding the word is dual, as is emphasized here. There is, first of all, the act of the ego, soul or angel, higher self or soul, as he sounds out the word from his own place on the abstract levels of the mental plane. He directs that sound via the sutratma and the vestures of consciousness to the physical brain of the man in incarnation, the shadow or reflection. This sounding forth has to be constantly repeated. The sutratma is that magnetic link spoken of in the Christian Bible as the silver cord, that the thread of living light which connects the monad, the spirit of man, with the physical brain. Secondly, there's the earnest reflection of the man in his physical brain upon the sound as he recognizes it. The two poles of being are hinted at here, the soul and the man, an incarnation, and between these two is found the thread, along with the pranava, or word, vibrates. Students of the esoteric science have to recognize the technique of the process outlined. In the case of the sounding forth of the word, we have the following factors. The soul who sends or breathes it forth. The sutratma or thread along which the sound vibrates is carried or transmitted. The vestures of consciousness, mental, emotional, and etheric or physical, which vibrate in response to the vibration or breath and are stimulated thereby. The brain, which can be trained to recognize that sound and vibrate in unison with the breath. The subsequent act of the man in meditation, he hears the sound, called sometimes the still small voice or the voice of the silence. He recognizes it for what it is, and in deep reflection, he assimilates the results of his soul's activity. Later, when the aspirant has passed into the mysteries and has learned how to unify the soul, and the lower man, so that they function as a coordinated unit on earth, the man learns to sound the word on the physical plane with the object of awakening the forces which are latent within him and thereby arouse those centers. Thus, he participates increasingly in the creative, magical, and psychical work of manifestation, with the object ever in view of benefiting his fellow men and thus furthering the plan of the planetary hierarchy. Well, we're going to leave it there for today. We did 7 sutras, and there's a lot in there. There's so much. I want to say that there's some very deep, profound stuff that we covered in there that is not mentioned or covered in some of the other books, and it would be worth noting them. Now we have to go back and try to find them. But that was there was some deep stuff there. All right, have a great day. We're going to get back at this, but so glad we decided to read this book. It makes sense to why we decide, this is what we decided on, because there were a number of other books. But this makes perfect sense. No. Okay. Have a good one.